Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today. I hope you're all doing absolutely excellent. Today, we're gathering to talk about a subject near and dear to my heart, and that is physical games. I was just at PAX East, and they had, of course, the limited run games booth. I picked up Metal Slug Tactics for my Switch. I also picked up Star Wars Bounty Hunter, childhood classic on PS5, and then I might be a Star Wars fan because I also got Dark Forces remastered, and this is in the VCR case. Really cool, awesome game. But nonetheless, as you can tell by the background of my recent pickups, I adore physical games. However, the writing has been on the wall for a while now that physical games are on the way out. And 2025 has been what I kind of define as the shove year. Like, this is the year companies are really putting their chests out and pushing a lot of physical gamers into buying things digitally. But again, if you look at the stats of any calendar year sales, you'll see not only digital gaming has continuously grown, but it's outnumbered physical games pretty heavily for a while. There was an argument to originally be made that there were enough physical game purchasers that companies walking away from it could risk losing some money, and gamers are stubborn and adamant enough, guilty as charged, to not buy stuff until a physical release comes around. Especially if I hear a company that released something digitally start talking like, yeah, we might do a physical copy soon, I'll wait it out. And many gamers are patient, especially in a day of just content saturation. There's so many options out there. I can wait a year until your physical copy is ready or the port I'm waiting for is ready. That's kind of the world that we live in. But we've lost some ground, and we're going to talk a bit about that today across some Bethesda games like Doom and Indiana Jones, and sort of how they're making a little bit of noise in the physical games community. But we're also going to talk a bit about Nintendo Switch 2 and the game keycard situation, which I did highlight a bit on Retro Rebound in a separate conversation video because we do so much physical game stuff over there. It felt like a good fit. But the situation has evolved a bit. I want to talk about that as well. So if you're new here and you're into what's going on in the games industry, consider subscribing, and also welcome. I want to start off with Doom the Dark Ages because this broke a little bit before the review embargo. It said the entire game in the physical PS5 version must be downloaded from the internet, according to gaming leaks and rumors, because some people were getting their physical copies of Doom a bit early. Does It Play then covered it and wrote on their website that only 85 megabytes are present on the disc, and when trying to launch the game, you'll be asked to update online and basically download the entire build, which was tested by a community report. If you've been on the Xbox side of things for a while, this is pretty standard for you, but this is starting to circle around a little bit more and get a lot more traction because Xbox games are coming to other platforms. And of course, Doom has always been multi-platform, but now we're starting to see with that Xbox attachment what this could mean for the conversation a bit. It's no surprise that games under the Xbox banner are walking away from physical games. I mean, I take, for example, even their most high-profile games like a Starfield. Whether you love it or hate it, game sold really well, had a ton of pre-orders going into its launch, ton of hype going into its launch. I bought the premium edition, and guess what it came with, as I've shown before? This cred stick here, which has a download code on the back. Not exact, I mean, I'm like, is that cheaper? Because, you know, obviously we'll talk about it in a little bit, but like, you know, physical games not being printed saves a lot of money, but it's like, is that really cheaper to make like a legitimately metal cred stick instead of just giving me the game with the data on the disc? I don't know. But this has been Xbox's way for a while, and it's pretty unsurprising when you look at the state of their platform. They're pushing a lot of digital things. I think, of course, of Game Pass first and foremost. And so it makes sense with the medium that they're trying to build that they kind of shove you into the digital space. But also, Xbox has always been a bit of a Band-Aid ripper. Like, when they start to see the writing on the wall, they head in that direction and they commit very hard. Just like we saw with their massive price changes. Like, they just commit very hard. Like, oh, $80 for most games moving forward. Or, hey, we're going multi-platform. They rip that Band-Aid off with that podcast. So that's just how Xbox does things. But it's starting to gain more traction because, as I've talked about before, physical games are coming over to PlayStation 5, and now PlayStation fans who otherwise would not have touched these Xbox games are trying to pick them up and learning that Xbox isn't doing what they're used to a little bit from certain games with PlayStation. For example, when Spider-Man 2 was coming out, Insomniac put out a whole statement on social media saying how, yeah, this is going to be all of the game data on the disc. Like, we strongly believe in preservation. And guess what? That got a physical game purchase out of me. But I sort of use myself as a bit of a gauge for a lot of the physical games community because I am very passionate about it. And like you noticed here, like I have 2 PlayStation games and a Switch game. I don't really buy physically for Xbox anymore because they have completely alienated consumers like me. And I know as a host of Defining Duke, I've been told that's forbidden, but I'm a gamer first. I don't give a shit. So myself and many others who pay attention to Xbox news are unsurprised by this, but you move over to Indiana Jones, Does It Play covers it again, saying confirmation that Indiana Jones on PS5 is indeed physical fraud. That's a great term. Only 20 gigabytes of data on there. At least that's a little bit more than the 80-ish megabytes. Mandatory update, another great example of how Microsoft values the physical game format. And so, yeah, again, the writing's been on the wall for a while. I think anyone are outraged by this. It's not even me trying to defend Xbox, just anyone outraged by it. It's like, we've known about this for a what, like 4, maybe even 5 years that Xbox has been pivoting. And so I feel like the time to adjust where you pick up your games has been there for a while. And Xbox just, they're not going back, right? Like they're already, you know, we don't know what's going to happen with their console even. You think they're going to start making consoles with disk drives? They're going to try to lower that console price wherever they can. So yeah, in Indiana Jones, Doom, great examples of where physical games are going. But where it gets really interesting and again starts to spread the conversation further is Nintendo. Because with the Nintendo Switch 2, a lot of people were surprised with Nintendo's push for digital games. But I think, again, people weren't paying close attention to titles like Wolfenstein 2 and many others, which did arrive with their own version of a game key card. Like you just bought the physical game and you downloaded, or you bought just a download voucher inside a plastic case. It was a total waste of materials, but that did exist pretty often during the Switch 1 generation. But now, because Nintendo has put a term on it, number one, but also because a lot of games are doing it, number two, it's brought a lot of attention to the physical games conversation over on Switch 2. So Necro Felipe was covering a data leak from Arc System Works, and one piece of information came out about physical games. They write in a translated post from Portuguese on Twitter, thanks to leaks from Arc System Works, only 3 types of formats have been found to be available for games planned for Switch 2. Download game only, cartridge with full game, which is only 64 gigabytes, and Potion as a tag/code name for a key card format. Now, one of the first questions that came to people's mind, and I don't think there's like a really good answer for it other than, you know, it's just like select games will do it. But Nintendo with 64 gigabytes and games getting much, much bigger than even when you try to optimize and condense for the Switch 2, it's a lot easier for games just to release digitally and not focus too much on file compression and optimization. So a lot of these games that could release and be on store shelves physically for Switch 2 will just be game key cards. I think where the conversation really ramps up to a place of a head scratcher is when you look at this confirmed list from Nintendo Life of officially confirmed Nintendo Switch 2 game key card releases. And there are titles on here like Puyo Puyo, Tetris 2S, you have Bravely Default, the HD remaster for the first game. You have on here Raidou Remastered, The Mystery of the Soulless Army, which I believe was like a PS2 game that got remastered. Even smaller modern games like Sonic X Shadow Generations, which don't run very high in file size, are here as game card releases. You have visual novel style games like No Sleep for Kaname Date also releasing digitally. In Japan, they also have their own exclusive game key card releases, such as Kunitsugami, you have Nobunaga's Ambition, Suikoden 1 and 2 HD Remaster, East 10, Proud Nordiques. And I think what gives me the biggest laugh out of all of this is that somehow Cyberpunk 2077, which a game, by the way, with all of its DLC included, has found a way to be a physical game. Like, that's such a W for CD Projekt Red. Like, all these other games have every reason to release physically, at least in the terms of file size, but CD Projekt Red finds a way. Now, obviously, it's a double-edged sword with digital games because many of us love indie games or AA games. And what this allows them to do when they release digitally only is you basically get to slash a lot of the budget that would go to producing physical copies, right? The cartridge, the case, any sort of slips you want to put in it. Like, that's why a lot of companies walked away from manuals, because of the cost of ink, the cost of printing, and then repeating that for hundreds of thousands, millions of copies. There were just a lot of ways to maximize the amount of money you make on your video games. And now you see how games are barely crawling by nowadays, releasing hardly anything in physical, so they're limiting all the costs there and doing most sales digitally, and games are still barely performing well enough. Again, it's almost like the economy of the games industry is quite broken, and it's not just sale prices for games, but rather the budget of them that is the problem, but that's a separate video into itself. As I was saying, though, the double-edged sword for the indies and the double A's is they get an opportunity to hit the market and be competitive, because given the industry is just increasingly more and more digital, what it allows companies to do is, I think Power World's a good example, where through just exposure and word of mouth, videos, articles, that game reaches the height beyond many AAA games with their mass marketing campaigns. The industry is a crazy beast like that. And in a lot of ways, it's a very even playing field. If you make something super unique that catches on to a particular niche and people start talking about it, it's just a snowball effect. Now, as I've said many times in the past, the difference is the snowball can also happen in a very negative way, where like once the conversation gets off track, as we've seen with many an example before, it just goes and goes and builds, and there's no real stopping it. Nonetheless, the simple answer is this just makes companies the most money. And while there are many games I hold out for on physical, and I'll always be patient because there's a lot of content there, it's really disappointing still to see. Even if I look at the stats and I go, okay, we're in like the 10 percentile now. Most people are buying things digitally. I do think the numbers get skewed a little bit because it's usually talking broadly about games. And when you look at like how much PC gaming has grown with Steam, I think that does move the bar in favor of digital games heavily, because that's just where a lot of people are buying things. But a lot of the consoles could be a bit more split favorably to physical game bros, since this is out there. But right when they stop putting, manuals inside of game boxes and really start making them thin by the end of the Xbox 360 PS3 generation, where you get like the warnings, the health warnings on the inside, like a single paper or something like that. When they started doing that, that's when I started to get really annoyed. So I'm like, dude, what is this? Like, the manual is such a big part of the experience. So I always worry with the loss of physical games that you do lose a part of the essence of gaming. Like, will there be a generation that doesn't know about how awesome it was to have that car ride home with the physical game? Will there be a generation that doesn't know the beauty of a midnight release because everyone's buying everything off their computers? And like, guilty as charged, there's just times where that sort of thing is convenient for me, like games I've reviewed. Like, there was a time where review copies used to come in the mail. I remember Ubisoft sending me in the mail for PS3, I believe it was, Assassin's Creed, Black Flag, and like it came via like a envelope in the mail, and like now all review codes are digitally. So the industry has shifted in a lot of ways considerably, but it just makes me sad to see, and I wanted to talk about it and get off my chest. So let me know how you're feeling about this physical game situation, ladies and gentlemen. I am eager to get your thoughts. Other than that, take excellent care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.